Hey, I'm Allison, and this is part 2 of a 3-part series about making button jewelry. The first part was about gathering materials, like where to get nice buttons and what findings you can use. And the next part is going to be about making these kinds of chokers with an elastic ribbon and sliding charms, pretty much from scratch. So that'll need a whole video, but these that we're looking at right now are a lot easier. The basic process for any of these is to take a button and the base for anything that will go with the cabochon. A cabochon being basically just a lump with a flat back and a curved surface. Oftentimes they'll be transparent, and putting a little picture on the base, then putting the cabochon in will give it a little bit of distortion and magnification, which is something I like for assemblage art too. Anyway, you take the button, scratch the back up, take the bezel, scratch the interior up or anywhere that it's gonna touch the button when it's being glued in. Get some thread. So your button, which is, I like to do that because I like having just the visual of thread in the button for jewelry, because I think that's kind of what gives people the cue that it's a button jewelry instead of just a shell or plastic. So it takes longer, and you have to use these kinds of bases, usually these bezels for cabochons, which come in adjustable rings, and little sliding charms for these kinds of cuff bracelets, and just any little leather strap like that. And also there's some good ones for pretty cheap that are just for making charms with. So anyway, you file down anything you need to file down, and then sew the thread into the button like I've done here, and in these, and in these. And then kind of pop it on there with, I use E6800. Actually, this is for the choker, I should take this out. I use E6800 for most of these, but anything that is industrial strength, water resistant, UV resistant with a flexible bond is good. Or just anything that you can have it out in the sunshine and have it get knocked around a little bit, and have it be in a slightly humid environment, or at the very least slightly humid environment, and still have it be okay. And then for E6800, depending on your general environment or wherever the glue is drying and curing, you can just leave it for between 24 hours and 72 hours. So I would leave it for probably, I'd only need to leave it for 1 day in this environment, but for jewelry that I sell, I leave it for 3 days anyway, just so that there's no variation with seasons or weather. So that's kind of it for the rings. You just do that and then attach them. For the cuffs, it can be a little more interesting depending on what kind of button you use. These are nice flat ones, and these bases will hold any thread lumps on the back, but you can see that they'll kind of stick out because the little sliding bases are pretty chunky. On the other hand, if you look over here, these are going to be a lot flatter because they have kind of a channel on the back. Come on, camera, focus a little bit. But and that kind of can hook over the edge, or curve over the edge of the little fixture a little bit. And then this is something that usually you have to get bulk lots of buttons for, or you can just, I guess, if you have one source of buttons that you are really sure that they'll fit and are very careful and measure before you order the findings, you could probably do the same thing. But these just fit into it like a cabochon, and that is very satisfying to my OCD tendencies. Over here, the charms are kind of similar. You just have to think through where are you going to need to accommodate thread. Is it going to cover the finding or not? Do you want it to? And I'll mention again, like I did in part 1, it's good to be sure that whatever chain or cord you decide to put the little charm on, that it fit without having to take the chain apart, if at all possible. Just to do a quick example, I'll have to sew these up, but let's try these 2 cuffs and this charm here. Those are both a little bit complicated. So I talked about the E6800 a little bit, and not to be confused with the E6000, which doesn't really have the right qualities for something that's going to be out in the sunlight in the outdoors. Because it's a more fine application, I use a disposable craft tip, although you can preserve them a little bit if you want. Just be careful that whatever you stop up the nozzle with doesn't have a weird reaction with the glue, because that's happened to me before. These you can just kind of cut with, let's see, did that, that's not quite big enough, but you can cut approximately down to the size that you need, and then they'll screw right onto E6000 or E6800. Oh, alright, this, apparently I got a new tube for this, so you just, the way to puncture it is, you have the lighting for this is awful, but you have a little cone in the lid and clunk, and it's gonna like try and blop out right away, so be real quick. And that does keep happening, so when you put the little cap on it, also be quick. This is kind of one of those metal tubes that it can be difficult to handle, because if you squeeze it, even after you take your hand off, it retains the same shape that it took on when you squeezed it. So it's just as if you're still holding it. Okay, let's see. Let me actually just move all of this stuff down here. And I've already sanded a bunch of these down, so they're kind of ready to go. One thing about this kind of glue is that even though it takes a long time to cure, it sets very quickly, so it's good to just do the placement of the glue fast and then pop things in as quickly as you can. I wouldn't say to take more than 5 minutes for sure, but the less time you spend on it, the better. After a pretty short, well, I'd let it cure for, quite a while, but eventually you can clean off the residue on the edge without necessarily risking the bond between the button and the base. Alliteration. This one is good beer. And also a pain in that it's gonna touch the button around the edge as well as with a buildup in the middle. So that's very good to leave some extra time to set and cure rather than just immediately thinking I'll only leave it for 24 hours. Even though on this scale it's probably fine. So yeah, if you also notice kind of the shapes of these, this one is a little indented, so I could go with one that's flat. This one is curved. Oop. Oop. I should have planned that a little better. Anyway, this one is curved, so I could use this one, which is also curved on the back. And it sounds a little pedantic to listen to now, but it is actually surprising how often that goes wrong, at least for me. So let's take a look at that. There's some excess here. Kind of go around with my fingernail real quick. And pretty shortly I'll be able to kind of it'll kind of ball up if I rub at it a little bit. That was a lot faster than I thought it would be. Just for a quick preview, I'm gonna kind of push all these aside. And rings, by the way, you can let them dry by, this could be a cardboard box or just anything that you can pinch an adjustable base around. Anyway, preview. So this is the kind of choker that I'm talking about. And I have like a couple of really nice charms here that I'm gonna make into some chokers like that. And I wanna also just do a little bit of charm making from the very beginning, which this is a little trickier in that there's no bezel. You just have to glue it directly onto this and then let it dry very firmly, and it works. But the reason it's getting its own is largely because of the findings on the ends, the ribbon ends, and choosing which ribbon you're using and what jump rings you're using, because I use a very specific kind. And just I'll talk a little bit more about sourcing than I did in the first video. Alright, that took a lot less time than I thought it would, but I'll try and get the next one done soon. Thanks. Bye. Just kidding. Hi. So I immediately realized that I did not sew thread into this button, which means there's going to be a quick demo of getting excess glue off, because it's like been less than a minute since I shut the camera off. it's like the glue is already kind of setting, and I can just take it off like that. So that is kind of an illustration of how fast you've got to move for this stuff. Okay, now bye.